is Doug?
It's not in his office, he's remote through his office, so you're gonna see him
Wasn't
one
he
more
down
time.
in North Carolina or
He's down
something
in
the other day?
South Carolina.
Okay,
we're live.
One of the Carolinas.
We're live, Caesar.
Okay. Okay. We're now live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the July 3rd. Excuse me.
Oh, please mute that.
There's an interference. Hold
I
on.
need to mute your computer.
Got it off? No, it's still on. Got a little electronic glitch here. We'll proceed in a second or a minute. Well said. I hope that's the last of electronic glitches. Okay, we'll start over again. Welcome to the July 3rd, 2024 Irvington Planning Board meeting. Everybody that's going to participate, I guess it's the holiday week, and thank you for taking the time out for this exciting kind of endeavor. First order of business, I'll introduce everybody that's here for the village. This is Sarah Palermo. She's the gatekeeper on Zoom. Is Ed Marin, he's the village building inspector. Doug Hahn is the village consultant engineer, and he will be operating by Zoom. Mary Ann Stessage, she's the village attorney. We have Lori Gazilowitz. She was absent last time, so you didn't get a chance to meet her, everybody. There's Dan McEllicott. I'm Caesar Manfredi, the chairman. Mike Smith and Mike Papuco. He also was not here last time. Okay, next thing is the minutes. Everything okay with the minutes of June 5th, 2024?
Yes.
I added it in here.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of June 5th, 2024.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. Okay, the batting order for tonight. Number 1 will be 2 Deep Hollow Close. Number 2 would be 3 Gray Rock Terrace. Number 3 would be 25 South Continent Street. Number 4 will be 12 Hudson Road East. And number 5 will be 36 North Broadway, locally known as the Maxon property. There are 2 other properties on the agenda. That was 255 Mountain Road and 2 Heritage Hill Road. They will not be heard tonight. They had some missing documents, and they will most likely be at the next meeting in August. Okay, let's start with number 1, 2024-13, 2 Deep Hollow Close.
Good evening. Everybody see me?
Yep, we hear you too.
Sorry. I will share my screen. Matt Behrens, representing the Munitz residents, 2 Deep Hollow Close. We are back to the planning board related to the proposed hot tub and gravel base for this residence, which also includes barrier fencing and screening fencing. I'll share my screen 1 second. I think this is probably the best view. Let me know if everybody can see this.
Yes, but okay.
So from the previous meetings with the board, we have demonstrated the coverage calculations. We've gone back to the zoning board for a variance for the coverage that has been approved, and we are back to the planning board for a resolution and also to formalize some of the issues that were raised by the board and by Han Engineering related to the fencing and screening. This is the location right here, if you can see my cursor for the hot tub, and there's a gravel base around it. We have since added
Okay,
barrier fencing around this edge of the property, which brings back to connects to an existing fence that is being replaced with a higher fence. It did not comply with the local ordinance, so we are raising that to 5 feet. It was a 4-foot high fence. There is an existing 6-foot high fence and gate here, and an existing screening fence that connects that gate to our new chain link barrier fence. Let me just bring up this, sorry. One of the issues that was raised previously, let me just see if I can get this over here. You can see this is the screening and the barrier fence on the north side of the property. What we've had to do is to remove some of the horizontal bracing and move it up because it did not comply with the 47-inch requirement. Just see if I can blow this up. So what we're doing is removing that existing horizontal brace and then moving it up so that it complies with that minimum 44-inch or 44-inch, 45-inch requirement. Additionally, adding, as I mentioned, this chain link barrier fence that goes around this part of the property. This will be installed just inside of the existing stone retaining walls, and we will allow the vegetation that's there now to just grow around it. And this is an elevation of that chain link fence. This will be continuous around that ring of the property to provide the barrier as required by both Irvington and New York State codes. This is the gate number 1 that we called out. This is going to be replaced. It's currently 4 feet high. It's going to be replaced with a 5-foot high fence and gate to comply with the requirements.
hey, thank you. I like your presumption of we're coming for the resolution tonight.
Wow.
And was there an issue, the pool fence, you can settle that later?
Yeah, there's 2 small issues with the pool fence. The cross bracing has to be on the inside of the fence, not the outside. The gate has to swing out.
I don't know,
and-
can you hear him?
Yeah, I can. And the cross bracing is on the it's on the secured side, and it does, and both gates do swing out.
Okay, good.
Okay, then it was the coverage was fixed. Okay, any comment from the board?
No comment.
I have no comment.
Mike
None.
Smith, Mike Bufuko,
None.
Sarah, anything in the public?
Nobody's raising their hand to speak and there are no comments in the chat.
Mary Ann, did you prepare a resolution?
Whereas in May 2024, Nathan and Margaret Munitz applied for site development plan approval to remove an existing wood deck and install a hot tub on a gravel base at their property at 2 Deep Hollow Close. The proposed construction required a variance from the zoning board of appeals, which granted the variance on June 25th. Han Engineering reviewed the plans and in a memo dated April 29th, made a number of comments which were addressed in subsequent submissions. Suzanne Nolan, the village's landscape consultant, made a recommendation which was addressed to her satisfaction. Planning board held a public hearing on the application on May 1st, June 5th, and July 3rd, 2024. Type 2 action under secret, therefore requires no environmental review. Now therefore be it resolved that the planning board grants the application for revised site development plan approval of the improvements in, no, not revised, for site development plan approval of the improvements reflected in the drawings entitled Munitz Resident prepared by Matthew Behrens, architect. And there's no conditions.
Okay, well done there, Mary Ann.
What?
Well done.
Yeah.
Any questions on the resolution on the board?
No questions.
I make a motion to approve the resolution as read.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Okay, we're in the process of signing it. Thank you very much. And your presumption paid off. Otherwise, we would,
Finally. Thank you
Have to
and happy holiday to everybody.
yes, enjoy tomorrow and the weekend.
You too. Thank you.
Number two, 2023-08. That's 3 Gray Rock Terrace.
You're here to represent the application. Can you please hit the raise hand button? Caesar, they're not here.
No, give it, Mike, give it to me. I need to fix something. Thanks.
The presenters are not here.
Number 3.
We'll go to comments. Okay, I'm told that the presenters for 3 Gray Rock Terrace are not on Zoom, so we'll move to number 3. Maybe come back to that if they join us later. We're moving to number 3, 2024-19, 25 South Continent Street.
So. Happy.
Hi there. My name is Dean Pushler, landscape architect for Human Poor and McClure, 25 South Continent Street. Essentially, we're here for some drainage improvements on an existing property. The property went under extensive renovation a couple years ago. That's been finalized, and the homeowner is getting a few drainage problems. There's water running into his basement, and I believe there's some water running off the property towards his neighbor's property too. So we're basically trying to create a drainage plan to remedy the drainage problems. I'll share my screen. Is this a good scale that everyone can see, or should I zoom in?
That's pretty good for the
Okay.
purposes of what's going on.
Yeah, so the high point on the property is the back property line. It pitches towards the street a little bit to the right. So it kind of pitches this direction generally. He's getting a lot of water coming down the basement stairs. Basically, it goes into the garage. There's also a lot of water getting into this window well that's here. So the solution to that is to provide a curtain drain along the back property line, pipe that to the front to a infiltrator, in-ground infiltrator, pick up the leader drains while we're at it. And so that'll take care of basically this portion of the property. And on the right side, pick up the leader drain here, add a catch basin to catch water that's underneath this deck. So what's happening is water's coming down, going underneath the deck, which is a screened-in porch, or open porch, and running down into here. So we're hoping to regrade underneath this deck and pitch the water here to a catch basin where we could direct it to a second infiltrator in the front yard. Most of the engineer comments were pretty straightforward. I think we can handle. There's a few, I'm not sure if Doug is on the call. A few. Okay, great. Number one, there weren't any dry wells installed at the previous application. I just talked to the architect because there was no increase in coverage that was not needed. So whatever reference was made to previous stormwater plans there really isn't any.
Did that
Uh,
include, did you?
Sorry, what it had said was, what it had said was that there was an existing stormwater system on site, so we were looking to find out more about what's existing out there, currently. It's likely that there'll be something in the place where you're proposing it.
It's possible because there is this leader daylights, this leader daylights, this leader daylights. I believe this is the only one that does not.
Okay.
So there may be something in here. We don't know what that is. We could scope it, or we could dig in this area and try to find it.
I finished the presentation and we have made more questions.
Sounds good.
Or are you finished?
Yep, I'll keep going. So basically the comments 2 to 9, fairly straightforward. Comment 10. I'm assuming, Doug, you just gotta want to shift this way. This dry well closer to the corner of the house.
You could just make the overflows closer to where it currently, where the splash block is currently. So wherever it would overflow would overflow essentially.
Oh, I see. So it'll back up, overflow into a catch base. Got it.
Yeah, that way it doesn't change anything.
Okay. So eliminate the overflow here. Okay. Soil testing results. So do you want us to do deep tests and perk tests?
Yeah, why don't we take a look at what's existing there? We can go over that with the building department and see what they have.
Okay. The soils data that I found,
I don't know if we have to go through all the details of this right now.
No, we don't need, I was just gonna interrupt it, Doug. There are serious, not necessarily serious, but there are obviously drainage issues that need to be resolved. And rather resolving them one by one in this setting, you're going to need to meet with either the building inspector and or together with Doug Hahn to resolve the drainage issues.
yeah, yep.
And there's a technical issue also. This is no reflection on your ability.
You guys
but
don't
last-
like landscape architects?
Well, the law says that you need to be an architect or an engineer.
Yeah, we'll take care of that. We'll take care of that.
Okay, and again, it's no reflection on your ability to do whatever you're doing, but the legal requirement is
Requires an architect or engineer. Understood.
licensed architect or a licensed engineer. What I will ask you is Doug, are you have any other questions other than your letter?
Me, no.
And I'll ask you, do you understand all the questions that you need to resolve with Doug Hahn at an off-site meeting?
Yes. Whatever questions I have, I'm sure he'll be able to clarify. And those were the 2 big ones that I had.
Okay. Okay, I think we're done for tonight. You need to meet with Doug Hahn. Let me
Okay.
ask the board, any questions?
No
Yeah.
questions.
Like,
No questions.
Nope. Sarah, anything from the public?
Nobody's raising their hand to speak and there are no comments in the chat.
Okay, straighten out the drainage issues and the licensed representative to make the presentation. Okay, you got your homework to do and enjoy the holiday tomorrow.
Yeah, you too. So we'll be back at the next meeting. Is that correct?
If
If you
want,
make the deadline.
if you make the deadline.
Which we will.
Why don't you reach out to me, send me an email or something and we'll coordinate,
Okay.
going.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a good one.
All right. Bye.
You said, all right, the project we skipped over because there was nobody on Zoom has reappeared. And that's 2023-08. That's 3 Gray Rock Terrace.
Hi, good evening. Sorry for the delay. I didn't realize it was 7 and I was just working away. Thanks for the notice. So real quickly, we had
Please
previously,
identify yourself.
oh, I'm
Skip
sorry, James Crap, Studio Park, representing myself for my own personal property. So we were approved, with the planning board, approximately a year ago. And we've begun construction on our property. And during that time, we realized that we hit a little rock in our proposed location for stormwater drainage. So we were allowed the opportunity to do a new test pit and potentially change the location of our stormwater system. We did not have our full set of calculations done before this planning board meeting, so we just submitted our initial design. And we started to submit, just as of yesterday, we got new perk test results and sent them to Doug. So we understand we have a couple of open items that we need to resolve, and they're pretty self-explanatory. So I just wanted to give notice of that. We should be able to clear up those things by the next meeting and come in with no questions. If you'd like me to, I could walk you through the differences between each design. I don't know if that's
That's
essential
okay.
or not.
The fact you're moving it back to where we didn't want it in the first place because of the tree back there. So the issue is our landscape architect is very concerned with the root structure of, which was the reason it was moved to the front, but now it's, as you reported, it's not possible in the front. It's back to where it's gonna cause problem for the tree.
Just to
So
to
there's
address
some
that, Caesar.
Let me finish. So there was recommendations from Susan Nolan, the arborist, about having an arborist on site. But that may not be needed if there was a suggestion. Doug, I think you made it in the letter. You got a new, is the deck completed?
No, not as of yet.
Good. Is there any reason why the path of the pipe has to be where the roots are and when you go where under the deck?
We're going
System.
to change that. Yep, it's not an issue.
Okay.
So each one of those comments, totally agree with them. And we can adjust as needed. So since construction has began, we have already disturbed this area and we're protecting it in kind right now. So it's available to take care of, and we can certainly reroute the piping under the deck as was suggested. Not an issue, good idea. And we're trying to do our best to avoid any root structures, which is like 95% of the property one way or another, which we were hitting in the front, back, and side either way.
Yeah, the construction access shown on the plan doesn't seem, I was out there the other day and it doesn't seem like it's very accessible for construction access where it was shown on the plans. And the tree at the dead end of that street, Susan seems to recall that was supposed to have some kind of protection on it. It did. So, yeah, look into that, please. There's
Certainly.
a tree right at the end of 38-inch tree.
Okay.
All right, and work with Suzanne on the roots when you
Of
change the
course.
pipe. I don't know how far away you could change the pipe and maintain a slope for drainage purposes.
We'll run it almost tight to the building, so it won't disturb any more than what's already happening. So
Okay,
it
Great.
should be fine. I think in the first sketch that we put together, we just went path of least resistance in plan, but there's no reason why we can't path it differently. So
okay. Sounds good.
So
Enjoy
that's-
tomorrow.
you too. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you.
Have a good one.
Oh, I'm sorry, don't go away.
Oh,
Yeah.
Don't go
Sorry.
away.
okay. I'm not.
Go into the holiday spirit, and I forgot to ask the board if they have any comments.
No comment.
I have no comments.
Mike,
No comments.
Mike,
Nope, not for me.
Sarah?
Nobody's raising their hand to speak and there are no comments in the chat.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Okay, thank you.
Now we can go. Enjoy the holiday.
If you take care of those things, we'll see you.
Not a problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was number 3. Number 4. Okay, 2024-2012 Hudson Road East.
Am I live?
We got you.
Great. My name is Alan Ross. I'm the architect representing the Haters at 12 Hudson Road East. I could start by sharing my screen and walking you through the property if you'd like, or if you prefer a different
Why don't you-
introduction.
Bring up the property, the site plan on a shared screen and you can make your little presentation, please.
Okay. Share screen. Can you see this image here?
Yes, we can.
Great. So in terms of site work, the proposal is to remove this curb cut here and this driveway area here. Basically, the red dotted dash line. There'll be some additional driveway removed here. So the overall stormwater load will be reduced because this area is being removed. Now, this area over here is going to be added because some of this area here is being taken away parking. So by adding a little bit of triangle here, it increases some of the turnaround and parking area in this kind of service court over here. In the at the back of the house, this hatched area here, let me zoom in on that. This hatched area here is proposed to be an addition to the family room, which currently is in this area here. As you can see, the addition is sandwiched by existing construction on both the east and the west, and obviously to the north. You can see this on the survey, site survey, which I can show you, but there's a row of pines here. There's a stockade fence here. There's other greenery hedges here, both on their property and on the neighboring property that screen this area. So it's pretty obscure, really just pretty much almost impossible to see from the neighbors. It's a one-story addition. I can show you the rear elevation, which we also have photographs of. So this is the existing area. There's as I mentioned in my brief, there's an unsightly deck here. And unfortunately, it sticks out quite far and it creates this kind of a hard to use shaded area underneath here that also shades the only primary opening to the family room. So it's just a kind of a bad design all around. So that would be replaced with this addition, one-story addition. The door that's currently here would be changed out to be a casement window, matching the other two existing windows, existing to remain. And then the deck area would just be over this garage wing. And I think it helps actually the rear elevation quite a bit. While if we're here on this rear elevation, two windows would be added to the, or a window and some shutters would be added to the kitchen here. And a door on the side here, which I can show you on the next elevation, would be replaced with windows. Actually, I have to show that on the model. At the front of the house, really the only thing that changes is the lattice here, which is really kind of falling apart, is going to be removed to reveal existing windows and some existing wood siding. There are 3 arches here. Let me zoom in on that. There are 3 existing arches here, which pick up on 3 arches that are on the side of the house. The east side, west side of the house, east side of the house. So that's really the only change to the front of the house, aside from the house being painted. Back to the site elevation. Sorry, you got a little detour there. So effectively, we're, I think, very much improving the streetscape by removing this curb cut. It's a narrow street, and if there's, my experience is that when there are cars parked along here, it's this having this additional curb cut here is problematic. The other thing we're doing is we're adding a walk to the street here. Otherwise, if someone's coming from this direction, they have to kind of do this big U-turn to come around. It'd be a bluestone walk, and be flush with the grass and the paint and the plantings. At the rear, another element is a proposed 12-foot by 16-foot pergola that is over existing impervious area and over the existing terrace. Because the building already has is over the allowable floor area, this 121 square foot addition would require variance. There's a proposed, and I was told by the reviewing engineer that this walkway would also require variance because it goes to the street here, across this area here. There's a proposed grill right here and a proposed additional patio and an existing fire pit. This existing fire pit was not permitted, so we're applying for that to be permitted, and this additional patio area. The reviewing engineer also noted that there were between a 1991 survey and this survey, there were other changes. Now that survey was a proposed survey, not a as-built. We have Google images from 2004 that show effectively this configuration, but we have to address that as part of our resubmission. The planting plan, this is lot coverage. The planting plan, effectively, we are filling in some rhododendrons here with mixed flower colors. We have some, again, some screening by Burnham here, and some planting beds. The driveway is cutting in here to create a distinction between the sort of entry area and the more private area here, and planting a dogwood here. This mating grass, the landscape architect reviewing the drawings asked us to be precise about the type of mating grass to make sure it's not an invasive cultivar, which we will do. No landscape changes are proposed in the back. Let's see. I guess in summary, I think we're going to improve the appearance of the building from the front, from the rear, and improve the street by removing that additional curb cut and this additional it's a pea gravel, but basically driveway area, and also by adding the plantings.
Okay. All set?
Yeah, I could get into a lot more detail, but I think that's the summary.
Okay. I'll do the planting first because that's easy. Looking for, if you read the article, the comments from the landscape architect, is
Sure.
tree protection needed around 36-inch sycamore.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to try to pronounce the invasive species that DEC regulates.
Yeah,
But I
that's
think
fine.
you already mentioned that needs to be worked on.
Right.
Okay. Now, this property has a lot of issues with you may or may not know, they may be self-inflicted by the current owner or they inherited from a previous owner. The amount of variance for coverage and floor area ratio,
Yeah,
while small above what's standing there now, there is a considerable amount of undocumented coverage that has to be considered as new, even though it's sitting there.
mhm,
If you include the undocumented, such as the basketball court, the shed, a lot of the walkways and the ramp, you come up with you're 117% over allowable.
right,
I haven't seen a number of that high in the time I've been sitting here. You're up to 8,974. Like I said, I don't know if it's self-inflicted, but somebody put a lot of coverage in without approval. And that becomes a problem because we consider that as new. If that was asked for, if that undocumented wasn't there today and you were asking for that, I doubt we would approve it. So you're
sure,
asking us to rubber stamp something that was put in unapproved, something that we probably would not have approved. So we have an issue with that. And I'm
sure.
not sure about the size of the patio. Do we know if the patio around the pool,
The patio's okay.
the patio's okay? But there's quite a bit of other material.
I think the,
Also, there's a lot of setback. There's a basketball court is in the front yard setback,
mhm,
and some of the other items you propose are in need variances for setbacks from the backyard, front yard. You got a lot of issues here, and I suggest you sit down with the building inspector. I don't know how you how you solved 117% over. At some point, we're going to need, if this is ever going to get approved, a neighborhood comparison chart, meaning that one of our charges is to ascertain that the characteristic of the neighborhood is not damaged, and it has such extensive coverage on your property when the rest of the neighborhood doesn't,
mhm.
is changing characteristic of the neighborhood.
Yeah,
So
I appreciate the comments. The, an interesting historical note is that this whole area here was a macadam asphalt tennis court. Back, I guess, maybe they got rid of it in 73, somewhere around then. Yeah, so at one point this entire thing was asphalt, and it's now grass. It's just an interesting historical note. But in terms of the current owners haven't added any impervious area to the property. We have a pretty good Google image from 2004. They bought the property in 2014. And it shows the same layout that you see today. I mean, not the addition, obviously, or this grill, but everything else. Yeah, we're well aware of the overage in terms of the lot coverage, and our intent is to improve that. I know driveways don't count in lot coverage, but still substantial reduction of driveway area. There's a small addition, 60 square feet here. And I get the point. I mean, I understand the point you're making, which is that even if the current owners did not create the overage, it still is what it is.
To make it clear, this is not uncommon. All too often this comes up, and it's something that we have to deal with. I mean, it's difficult to say, well, gee, you got to tear that down and you got to tear this down.
Mhm.
You need to do something to bring it into a little, to bring it into a compliance a little better than it is.
Sure, sure. I mean, I would guess at a minimum, don't add any. I mean,
I
that'd be
mean,
a
people,
starting point, right?
small expansion and wind up having to take, not only you can't get what you asked for, but you have to take stuff that's there away. Not,
Right.
I'm not saying that happened here, but that has happened in the past.
Right, and that would be a best conversation to have with Ed or,
Well, see what you can do about coverage. And I'm not sure, that basketball court, is in the front yard setback and aside from the coverage issue, I'm not sure. You know, there isn't any reason to discuss a front yard setback for a basketball court,
yeah,
at least my opinion.
right, there's some historical document that refers to that from quite a long time ago, but I have to sort of lock in on that. But it might not matter anyway. And, you know, I understand totally to get your point about the basketball court being the front yard setback and also adding impervious area.
If there's some history to that, right, I have a thing about that. I don't like to repeat a mistake, especially when it's somebody else's mistake. And
Sure.
the front yard setback, I can't see that happening if that came in today for a first time pool
Right.
or basketball.
You know, I think we can address, I'm hoping, I'm anticipating that we can address the lot coverage issues that will, you know, continue to improve the property and be acceptable to the board. The issue of the floor area is in a sense more of a concern to me because and I just want to make a sort of point out that if you look at the house, the massing of the house, it doesn't look bigger. In fact, it in a lot of ways looks smaller than some of the adjacent houses, certainly the two houses directly across the street, because it's a very narrow house. So the roof is actually, the peak of the roof is actually lower than say the two houses across the street. And because the massing is broken up into, you know, primary, the original center hall colonial, and then the two wings, and then the third, the garage at the end, because that massing steps down and steps back, it really, I think, reads very well in terms of its overall volume. So I don't think it's an issue of visual mass, but because of all the attic areas that are accessible, it really does, you know, inflate that number. So the same exact house with the same exact appearance would have much less floor area if, say, the attics were inaccessible and they were all truss built. I think that hopefully that would be taken into consideration. I know the zoning board of appeals would have to rule on this, but but really it's, you know, adding that 121 square feet to the to an area that is, you know, cannot be seen by any of the neighbors would have a major impact on the usability of the house.
Well, the good news is I didn't dwell on the FAR. But you do need to do a neighborhood, chart for both FAR and the coverage. For those in the audience, FAR is floor area ratio. It's the McMansion code. It's the ratio of the floor area to the price of the property. And the intent is to regulate the size of the building in relation to the lot. And there are numbers in our code to minimize the McMansion look of massive, out of character building in the middle of a different, in the middle of a neighborhood that doesn't do that. Okay, and the other good news is that you don't have to worry about the tennis court taking coverage. So that was a plus.
That's a huge plus.
Okay, any comment from the board, Lori?
I was just a little surprised that you were closing the curb cut in your drawing instead of the other one, just
Mhm.
because it's such a massive driveway. And I thought it might be more visually appealing to use that other, and get rid of the rest of the driveway instead, although you did recognize that that doesn't really help with your bar necessarily, but just visually.
Yeah, one of the reasons, and I think that's a great point, one of the reasons is the adjacency to this driveway, I think. Because, again, it's a relatively narrow street. If somebody's, if you have a landscaping truck or somebody parked along here, which often, it's happened a few times when I've been on the property. To get out of this driveway is tough. And, the next driveway down is down here. So it actually kind of has a nicer rhythm of driveways as you go down the street. Which I think is just nice generally, but it also helps in terms of entering and exiting from this property. So that was one reason. And the other reason is I think there was a desire to sort of drive by the front door on the way to this. It's just a different sort of narrative path.
Okay, Lauren? I have no questions. Yeah, I thought about that too, since the garage is the opposite side of the property of the driveway you're keeping, but you answered it. Mike Smith?
So my main issue is how this property got from a proposed square footage, which was shown on the 1991 survey, going to 4,721 square feet to its existing of 8,811 square feet. And so what was in the package was an application for the improvements shown on that 1991 survey, but we don't know what happened to that application. Nor do we know whether any other applications after that. So the history of how it got to the existing 8,811 square feet is more important to me than your additional 121 square feet.
Right. I actually put together a timeline of all the building permits applied for and certificates of occupancy and for the history of all the ones that are available. So I have that document. I guess it was just a sort of a steady accretion. Originally you had the Center Hall Colonial. There was originally I think a garage over here, and then with the porch, and they just, basically there's accretion of over time, over the decades. House was built in 1927. And the last addition, major addition, was this garage over here. Again, it has a very nice scale and form, dormers, low roof. It's really very attractive. I think that the elevation from the street is beautiful.
Okay.
But I think the regulation that says you have to take all this attic area, and that adds a huge amount of square footage, even though it doesn't actually add anything to the volume of the building. That's a big part of it. And that might have changed since 1991. I'm not sure about that. The rule in terms of what you consider include as gross floor area.
Mike has a good question, and we talked about it. I thought about it, and just because our records don't show any variances that would have brought you from the 93 and 91, from the amount of 47 to 89, that doesn't mean they don't exist. So if you can find variances and previous variances that help you out with how you got to where you are,
sure,
that would be helpful. We don't have that.
So sort of like a timeline with a narrative showing
Thank you.
The development of the property.
Yeah. Mike Bafuco?
Just one question. The addition to the driveway in front of the garage that's gone from like round to kind of a rectangular space. You said that was to help with turnaround. Oh, can you?
Oh, this right here.
Not the upper left of the driveway near the proposed path.
Right. So
I asked, it's now looks more like a rectangular parking area.
Right.
Which
The,
we usually
the,
try to avoid. Not really, it's very far away from the garage and open, so I'm not sure how turnaround is additional space is necessary.
right, so there's a three-car garage here. And sort of as you're sort of, depends on where you're backing out from. If you're backing out from here, of course, you don't need it. You can just kind of back like this and go this way. If you're backing out from this bay here, you'd have to do like a multi-point turn to kind of back into here and back out. It'd be a little bit more difficult. It's easier to back
What's
straight
the
in.
distance from the front of the house to the end of the proposed driveway space?
It's probably about 50 feet from here to here. I'm guessing just based off of the setback line. I mean, it's nice. One characteristic about this driveway that's important to note is that it is pea gravel. So, it blends more smoothly with the adjacent turf. So it doesn't read as like a heavy asphalt driveway.
My concern is less driveway and the tendency to use that kind of space as a parking lot.
Sure. Yeah, I'm just, FY, I mean, couple considerations there. One is that they do tend to park close to the front door here or close to this door here, to the two entries, basically. So, they don't tend to park over here. The other is that if this was going to be used as a parking area, it would probably be during like a birthday party or something. In which case you'd be keeping people off the street, parking on the street. So it's probably not gonna be used that much and on those occasions that it is used, it's really, keeping people off the street, And there is a net, as a pretty dramatic, I think almost 400 square foot net reduction. When you take into all this that's being removed and this little bit that's being added.
Okay,
The direction Mike was going with that is parking areas are considered coverage. So maybe perhaps if you were to show a diagram that the turning radius of a car there to convince us that it's really necessary, what I might call a hammerhead, so that you could back out and back into what is driveway instead of parking area. Because
Right.
you got enough trouble with coverage without adding the parking area. If we perceive
Right.
that as a parking area.
But am I correct that we're not getting credit for removing this in terms of lot coverage?
That's a driveway. Driveways don't count.
Right.
That's,
Um,
you're correct. It reduces permeability, but it doesn't do anything for coverage.
right.
So
And just the other note about that is,
let me
so,
speak,
we're
please.
planning,
Let me
Sorry.
speak, please. I think it might be, I hope it's easy for you to show that you need that, what might be a parking area, you need it as driveway to back out and go out. Okay?
okay,
Thank you. You have what you need. You need to talk with the building inspector and set things up.
Thanks a lot.
Any further comment? Yeah. Mike Smith, Mike B.
Nope.
Anything from the public, Sarah?
Nobody's raising their hand to speak and there are no comments in the chat.
Okay, I think you have a rough road ahead of you. The coverage and the setbacks are a problem.
thanks for your review.
Okay, thank you. The next one is 76 North Broadway, 2024-18. We're going to take a little bit of a break to make sure the applicants are sitting here and they want to make sure we'll take a break that their computer is melded with the Zoom. So we're going to take come back at 8 o'clock.
I'll make sure they're on.
I would say.
Which one are you using? Hit the raise hand button for the one you're using.
The Yankees are behind the
Yankees are losing 2-0. You're right, Cincinnati.
So I say, you're a panelist?
Yeah.
And then I turned it off because
That's why I don't.
I didn't want to have to, I didn't want it to stay open and not be asleep. Turned it off, so I go.
As far as I checked with sure.
Oh, my, didn't seem right.
Yeah.
Well, no, you gotta get it right. Because I have to circulate it, I have to circulate the EAF, so. No, circulate it to the other top eight. So if you think there's anything in it that's not right, you should say that one day.
You guys getting ready? All right, it's 8 o'clock. Is the applicant ready with the computer? Yes. We're all set? Logistics are settled. Okay, we will now reconvene with, as I said, 2024-1876 North Broadway, locally known as the Maxon property. We have an applicant in person. Please proceed.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair, members of the Planning Board, Catherine Zelantis from Silverberg Zelantis. I represent the applicant, DKR9 LLC, Pharma RE Development. With me tonight is Peter Gato to my right from Peter F. Gato and Associates. Across from me is Peter Gregory from DTS Provident, and next to me is Rocco Varma from Varma RE Development. So based on comments that we received from the board and its consultants, we submitted revised plan, and the revised plan is up on the screen. This plan no longer proposes that irrigation pond. And instead of two buildings, now being proposed is one building that has direct connection to the existing structure. So this allows direct access from the proposed underground parking to the existing structure. Also, based on the revision to the siting of the buildings, we eliminated the need for the large staircase that some of the board members raised concerns about at the last meeting. The project still proposes 57 units. It's just in a different configuration. There will be 53 units proposed in the new building and 4 in the existing structure. The project is still proposing the same amount of moderate income units of 5 and 6 fair and affordable units. And the project still proposes a school use as part of the proposed new building. The revised plan complies with FAR requirements and coverage requirements. We did receive your consulting engineer's memorandum that requested a schematic and tabular breakdown to verify the coverage numbers, and we will submit that for the next submission. Also, as the revised plan no longer proposes the pond retaining walls or parking spaces within 125 feet of the Broadway buffer, no variances are needed from prohibitions of building in the Broadway buffer area. We submitted a traffic impact study and are in receipt of the traffic review memo from INET's traffic consultant. We understand that the board has retained its own traffic consultant, AKRF. We also understand that AKRF has not yet had an opportunity to review the submissions, and this board does not have the benefit of a review memorandum prepared by AKRF, and no representative from AKRF could be here tonight. So given this, our traffic engineer intends on doing a presentation at this board's August meeting. This way, it could be a more comprehensive traffic presentation that addresses not only the board's consultant's comments, but in its comments. We ask that this board may want to consider asking the public to hold their comments about traffic in abeyance until the August meeting, after this board has the benefit of input from AKRF, its traffic consultant, and someone from AKRF could be here to hear the comments raised by the public about traffic. At this point, I would just like to turn it over to our project engineer to go through the plans in a little bit more detail.
Hi there, I'm Peter Gato, Peter Gato Associates Architects. So as Kathy mentioned, that the plan is certainly revised, and a couple of big picture moves, I think, really enhance the project for the benefit of the site as well as the maintenance of the house. And respectful of the various codes and such that are in place with Irvington. The one major element you could see here, essentially the school was turned, it used to be under the ground floor of this southern building. Now it's turned perpendicular, so it's now all connected inside as one sort of square. The courtyard still remains, and then you see a connection path where this gray line is here. And then this path to the house, I'll show you the section in a second, but it does make path of travel beneficial for parking in the underground garage, which offers connection to the building, the school, and to the house. Also serves as common for deliveries and trash removal and such, all connected underground and through the elevator system taken out. And also has an easy path for people coming, going to the school, which is still the drop-off section is on the western side of the property, and frontage directly access the school there. And once again, we'll talk about it in a second, but the garage entrance, as it was before, is underground on this portion, parallel to Strawberry Lane as well. So, in reference to the comments, I'm just going to address some specific comments that came up last time. Question about the height, and so we did consider the height. We are aware of what's allowed, what's not allowed. I think there's a question about the rooftop access. There's the parapets and such. So this is a graphic depiction with actual dimensions to show how the red line is the existing topography. Our buildings, as you can see from the bottom section, are kind of working with the topography building into the hill. And with respect to that, we are maintaining a 35-foot boundary in height, stepping back as we go. So is exactly as your code sort of demonstrates clearly. And then you see in this section also, it's important that that connection I was referring to, vertical circulation of the building here and from the elevator stairs and the connection at the basement level to the existing house. And the garage is underground, as you see here in the dark gray. The tan is the school, as it was earlier over here, but now it's still in the frontage facing the west. There was a question about the Broadway escape. So we submitted something. I do have to, it was 3/4 right. So the existing photos we took just before we applied a month or so ago. And these are photos I took in January. So you can see existing streetscape in summer, existing streetscape in winter. And I think there was a comment or question about where's the building? So in summer, the building is here, but it's screened, you don't see it. But right in the left side, your screen, this was the one that should have been in your packet, but just somehow got switched up. I'm not sure why. So the driveway is coming in through here and the house is sort of in the middle and the building is sitting to the left portion of the site, as you see there. Just some visuals we've said mid last time. These are not updated with the current design, but the spirit of it still kind of remains a little bit. Where we have a outdoor courtyard, which we enjoy by the students as well as the residents in different times. Again, the house is going to be lower, no staircase, but the general openness and central courtyard feel is what we're going for. And if you notice the brick on the right side, which is a school, is the same sort of brick, is in color and texture as the existing 1850s JP Morgan house, as well as the white vertical columns, which is the most striking thing you'd see from a distance of 450 feet from the Broadway. We're picking up cues of that white in the school building to kind of have a grounded, familiar feel both in school and also paying homage to the mansion that's going to remain. And this would be general feel looking out a little bit to the west, it's courtyard feel, buildings either side. Again, the school, this is going to be a little bit higher. So at the point where it's one level higher in this view, we can imagine it as it steps back into the hill. And then we sort of showed some long versions. Again, mixing a brick to match the building and some other woods and other lighter materials as well, heavily screened on all sides. And then this I just want to bring up, in lieu of the pond we had there before, we were toying with the idea of having some landscape inside there, which we're not agreed upon yet, but certainly would be something more of this nature than the pond that was there previously. And then just to quickly show the underground garage and its locations, generally centrally located under both buildings and the courtyard, and then the connection to the basement through the section I showed earlier. And that's what we have for here. You want to talk about the civil engineering aspects, Peter? Sure. Okay, we'll do your plans.
Wow.
You just scroll down to the third shot.
Don't stop.
Peter Gregory with DTS Provident. Our office is the project engineer, and we've prepared our site plan, grading, utilities, and stormwater for the proposed project. With the revised building, our access driveway remains in the same location. It's mid portion of the property and provides two-way vehicular access to the parking garage on the southern side of the building, and also allows for a one-way access up to the front of the building to allow for a drop-off for the students at the front. And those people would be able to leave and exit the site through the one-way access around the northern site back out to the intersection.
While you're talking about that, could you just, because that would be a question, could you just show me where that access is? Because I can't
So
to get to the school.
yeah,
to
so in
drop
lieu
off
of,
the
in lieu of Strawberry Lane, which would be now, considered an emergency access only. The main entrance to the site for residents and for staff and the students will occur from, North Broadway in the mid portion of the property. We've selected a location that there appeared to be a clearance coming through. We can minimize some of the disturbance to the trees in that area. And that would allow us to come in for approximately 60 to 70 feet into the site, where we would then have two-way traffic up to a point that would continue in for the parking garage for residents and staff. And then we would run a one-way aisle up to the top with parking, drop-off parking to allow for the families to drop off students at the school. Those people would continue wrap around and then leave the site. Okay. In order to maintain site distances in both directions, there will be a portion of that wall that would have to be removed. It's approximately about 60 feet of the wall would be eliminated to maintain that site, both the site distances, both in northern and southerly direction. There would be some pruning of some of the shrubs in the front to also maintain that. In terms of utility connections for this property as well as the adjacent property to the east, all the utilities are running through a utility easement that's running parallel with the northern property line up to the rear of the site and allowing the people to the east to connect as well. The proposed utility connections will occur in the same location. Electric, our water service and our sanitary service will all be proposed through that easement as well. Stormwater. Currently, the stormwater on the property that's serving the existing dwelling as well as the office and parking is collected, conveyed in a westerly direction and discharges onto the surface directly out onto Strawberry Lane and North Broadway. We are proposing a subsurface infiltration system in the center of this area as well as in this southwest corner of the property. Last month, we performed soil testing in the form of deep hole test and infiltration test, and we did receive acceptable soil test results for the infiltration. And we believe that we will improve the drainage condition on the site. We're going to be capturing runoff from the building, existing and proposed, as well as the driveway parking areas, and infiltrate that as part of our mitigation practice for the stormwater. As a result of the disturbance on the site, there will be an impact to trees. There's approximately 3 acres of disturbance that will occur. There are 115 trees on the site, and right now we're indicating approximately 56 trees to be removed. We did receive a copy of the, I guess, your landscape consultant's report, and we will have to assess and study further other impacts to trees as a result of the areas of influence to each tree as a result of the regrading and the layout of the driveway and some of our retaining walls on the property. With the modified footprint, we were able to eliminate retaining walls along the northern access driveway, and we were able to reduce the length or the extent of retaining walls on the southern side to keep them out of that 25-foot buffer to North Broadway. Now, one of the other things that we've been able to look at as well is our emergency access. Mr. Hahn was able to provide our office with dimensions of the village's fire apparatus or the aerial ladder truck, and we've studied. And we've studied bringing that vehicle into the site and maneuvering it around the front of the property, as well as even showing how it could enter the site through Strawberry Lane for an emergency purpose. So we were provided with the criteria of the ladder truck. We were able to create a template for that. And in this sketch is showing the ability of the fire truck to enter the site, maneuver through the access driveway, have the ability to come to the front of the building here, as well as leaving the site. This is studying it from a horizontal geometry perspective. And once we progress further with our grading and our profiles, we will study how well this will work with our, the vertical geometry of our driveway. We're also showing the ability to bring the fire truck in through Strawberry Lane across the existing gravel driveway. We are showing an area to the east behind the new building where that vehicle could turn around and maneuver to pull back head out of Strawberry Lane. And we will include this sketch with our next submission so that we can discuss it with the engineer and maybe even. We have had an opportunity to review Mr. Hunt's memo. And we will be developing the plans further for the information he's requested. I think we can address the comments that he has provided.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Okay. Gonna make an exception in that I don't like to ask a question in the second meeting as a surprise when it wasn't asked in the first meeting. But in a project like this, it's hard to pick up everything. And plus, there's two members here that weren't here last, and Lori has indicated she listened to it, so she's not going to be repetitive on some question that was covered. In terms of the changes, I'm going to briefly touch on two things before we go to traffic, because without doing the traffic, it's, we're not going anywhere. I have a whole series of things to follow up with on your presentation, but two of them are important. The question I didn't ask last time is the entranceway, the stone wall. We're going to need to see details of what's that going to look like, and the site distances, because DOT, I'm sure they have standards, if not guidelines, on what the site distances, so you can safely see what's coming. So you need to show sight lines, and I can appreciate it that you have this broader with the stone coming in like a scallop. I couldn't see that, but you need to show us exactly what it's going to look like.
We can, and we have a profile through that section as well.
Yeah. We don't want to be surprised. Oh, we thought it looked like that, but the photograph, that doesn't work that way. And my other broad thing, which is different than what the last thing, is you filled in between the two buildings, as you pointed out. And that's creating more of a frontal view from Broadway, which, by the way, you showed the north and south view, but you didn't show the west view of what that might look like, the new configuration.
It's right here, Chair.
Well, that's from far away.
This, the building, well, the building is at that point, it's about 350.
That picture is not in what I saw in the presentation.
That's what I'm saying. This one was not.
Right. And in terms of the summer view, if you go out there before it gets dark or when it's still light, there's a dozen or half a dozen white trucks up there in the parking lot. And from what I understand, the parking lot is about where the building is going to be. You can clearly see the trucks, the white trucks. So I can't imagine how you're not going to see a building when you can see 6-foot high trucks. And like I said, the look from Broadway with the previous presentation of two smaller buildings, as opposed to now those two buildings are connected in the middle, and the parallel view to Broadway is now bigger. And if I remember, Marion, you can correct me, and Ed, that the height requirements were changed to allow for the buildings to be perpendicular to Broadway as opposed to parallel to Broadway. I mean, there was a purposeful change in height requirements to attempt to avoid a parallel building to Broadway.
So that's a good thought, but maybe it wasn't clear. So that it's kind of layered, as you see stepped here. The school's only one level, similar to the way it's one level office building right now. So it's almost the same kind of concept that you see one level low building in front of the house. And then these two stories of light gray above it are only one story. So it's only 2 stories here. The darker gray is a 3-story, which we're respecting the setback lines of 253 feet. So it's 1 story for the school, little bit of setback, you have one more story residential, still open break in between, so in theory, the concept is still remaining, two taller buildings, 3 stories, not that tall. On either side, with only 1 story in the middle, which allows for this sort of openness, and this is so low and we have a landscape anyway. I think the concept will still remain that you see some below in the foreground, one building, what is 2 stories in front of you, and 50 feet beyond that, receding back to the east would be the second story to complete the 3 buildings.
Yeah, scroll down to the north and south, yeah, you didn't show the west view, which would be for Broadway, the west elevation, like you did in the first presentation.
Correct.
And one of the issues I had with the first presentation was what you showed, in my opinion, did not fit the characteristics of Broadway. And within the code change to allow for multifamily, it very specifically said, Mary Ann, correct me, I don't have the exact words, but I'll paraphrase that the scenic character of Broadway needs to be maintained. And in my opinion, the rendering, the Westview rendering that was in the first submission didn't do that. And I have no idea what the present Westview would be to opine on if it's within the characteristic of the neighborhood.
So I'd like to understand what you mean by characteristics of the neighborhood. Right?
Well, it shouldn't look like a factory or a barracks.
So I don't think that this architecture.
It's very intangible.
It's a subject,
It's subjective, you're correct.
Yeah, we could talk all day. The glass buildings are beautiful, shingles buildings are beautiful. It's just the way you articulate the point. Yeah, so it's not so much to copy what's next to it, copy what's there. I don't think a factory is a perfect term.
Well, I can't see that. That's your word for it. You didn't show the west view.
This is the West View right here.
No,
Elevation, west elevation.
Elevation.
you didn't show the west elevation.
I understand. So I thought that last time there was a concern about the beautiful character of Broadway.
Right.
And you're moving 30 miles an hour down Broadway, and you're really gonna see it at a kind of a glimpse.
Well, you're not living here, I am.
Well, I guess, okay. I'm not saying that's what, I'm like, standing and looking at architecture, but houses across the street are much closer to Broadway. This is way set back. That's all I'm trying to convey.
I know, it's up where the parking lot is, where you can see the cars that are there now.
Right.
If you drove there, you could see the trucks that are up there. Anyway, I don't want to dwell on this too long,
Clear it up, no problem. Next time.
because the traffic, we don't have to worry about the trucks or the west if we don't get past traffic. So why don't we do that? You completed, you submitted it, it's in the public document, and I'd be remiss if these people here and on Zoom were not able to opine on the traffic as you requested.
Are you good? Why don't you see? If
Yeah, I am.
people have other questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're not gonna do that. We're going to ask the public. And we're first gonna do just traffic, because there's a lot of other things, and if we start doing a half a dozen things at once, we'll never get finished. So we're first gonna do traffic, and then we'll get into other things, like coverage and site capacity and emergency or the other trash removal, which you didn't cover. You have any other comment? You have anything? on traffic? And you saw.
The only thing I would say is, and this isn't traffic necessarily directly on Broadway, and I know everybody here is going to cover it, so I'm not going to go into that. In terms of the school drop off, my kids were older when we moved here, but I have seen that nursery school and the young elementary grades do a drop off where parents pull up and the teachers take the kids out of the car. You're showing people pulling into spots to take their kids into school, and that pattern might not really be as advantageous and would affect the way that you would actually do the drop off. So I think you should think about that. And unfortunately, because we're not in a school calendar right now, you wouldn't be able to see that. But if you were here in September, Dow's Lane and the Shames JCC, I see that parents don't get out of their cars. And I think that's an important thing to think about. And also I'm wondering, I'm guessing those are not full day spots. So your teachers would, and the staff would also be using the underground garage. Okay.
Yeah,
And just how many outdoor spaces will there be in addition to the garage number? Well. These are twelve. 12 outdoor space, yes, and the number of garages is. I think it's. 100 and some. It's almost 100.
currently.
Yes. And do you have an estimate of the number of staff with the school?
I think Rocco could speak about the school operations.
Well, okay,
That's in traffic.
okay, well, let's traffic.
That's that question.
No, it's relevant,
Okay, it's relevant.
absolutely
Go ahead.
relevant,
Yeah.
so.
Sure.
Good evening, Rocco Varma here. Thanks again for your time. Will we just address the question or go to the initial question?
We do both.
Sure. The outdoor parking spaces are actually designed for drop off. Our school, this school here, Primrose School, it operates more or less like a preschool, nursery, daycare concept where the actual parents do go inside and drop off. I'll let the traffic speak more intelligently about the drop off time period. That's why we have calculated space for outside drop off only. And of course, to be utilized during weekends for the residents. But yes, the staff will be parking indoors.
Yeah, Mike.
Actually, the number of staff you anticipate.
Oh, right.
25 to 27 folks is the total staff that we're expecting in the building.
Okay. So they need to park in the basement.
Correct. Parking spaces are allocated in the basement, and the parking spaces presented and shown meet the requirements.
Well, we don't know that because if you have trash removal in the basement, that may impact the number of parking lots, but that would, I had asked that question last meeting, but that hasn't been. we'll go
Yes,
over that.
so-
Let's not do that now.
Okay.
Mike Smith?
So Ed, if there are 100 garage spaces underground and 25 of them are dedicated to school staff, leaving 75 for residents of 57 units, is that sufficient under the code?
That's not how it works. I still struggled or miss on what factor they use for the school for parking, because we don't have one in our code. So it would be more than the 25 for the teachers, because you still have people coming and visiting, you have events. So I think that's one of the things we need from AKRF is an understanding of their usage of the calculation that they provided for the school. The residents, we have numbers we can work with, but
But isn't it one parking space for one bedroom apartment?
yeah, we have for the
Yeah, so
residentials.
remember, this is mostly one bedrooms, so it could be that there were, yeah. If they were a bunch of two bedrooms, you'd be right, Mike, there might not be enough, but if
So
they're mostly one bedroom.
Without knowing that number and where it came from, I'm not gonna comment on the school, but the residential is easy.
Okay. And so what time is typical, Dan, you finished?
Yeah.
Sorry. So what time is typically drop off and what time is typically pick up?
Drop off is generally from 7:30 to about 9:30, but parents can drop off throughout the day. And pickup is again, same time. They can pick up anytime after drop off, but it's generally from 4:30 to about 6. Is when, now again, going back to traffic, they will address it more appropriately as to exact time frames it allocates, but these schools don't run at the public system where drop off all is at one time and the ring bell and the drop and the closures at the same
The
time.
reason I asked the time is because the traffic study refers to peak weekday AM hour and peak weekday PM hour. I'm
Sure.
trying to understand what times those are and how they relate to the drop off times.
Yeah, again, the traffic will answer that question as to what is considered peak. I don't think they necessarily refer to our peak, they refer to peak on traffic on roads, period. And that encompasses all occupations, all traffic throughout mornings and afternoons.
So I guess that's a question for Peter.
No, that'd be traffic question.
I thought Peter's here from the.
He is, but he's from the civil. He's from the civil
Oh, so we
side.
don't have anybody here to answer tonight the traffic questions. Okay, so although this is a DTS project, you're not here to answer that.
That's because
Okay.
because the town, the village, AKRF, representative is not here, was not intended to be here, so it wouldn't be,
You could certainly take a note if he has a question on traffic.
sure, we have all the questions,
So-
absolutely.
No, his question.
So is this your final traffic report?
I guess, depending on,
Are we supposed to take it as well, it may be revised, but you want us to consider this as your traffic study? It's not a work in progress,
That's correct.
right?
That's a submission that
So-
we've made with additional responses to be after AKRF comments.
Okay, so it says here on page 2 that it's based on field observations. I'm wondering when they were made. Because the study, it says that it's on page 5, it says the traffic volumes were obtained from AKRF's traffic study conducted in September of 2023. So I'm wondering if your consultant is just relying upon what was occurring in September 2023, or did something more recently and actually was here in town, because they say that they were field observations. So I'm wondering when the field observations were. And the reason I say that is because the report says, and I know this may seem small, but the report says that it's a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit in Irvington, and it's not. So I was just wondering why that was. And so I could ask my other questions to the traffic person when they.
Yeah, this is exactly, Mr. Smith, why we actually did not have traffic on board tonight, to ensure that your professional, which is AKRF, also has had an opportunity to review and have more intelligent questions for us to address them appropriately outside of just the question perhaps you may have. It would not be beneficial for the village to be represented without a party across if we are presenting a traffic report or traffic testimony, we should say.
I'm not from front.
Mike, Lafupa.
I just want to clarify the parking in front, you said during the week was for drop off only. And you said on the weekends would be for use for residents?
So it is designed that way. I didn't particularly say only for that purpose, but it's designed for drop off and pickup during the week. And on the weekend, there is no operations in school. So it's really open for residents that are, or visitors off the residence, perhaps.
Designed by drop off, you mean physically designed, or there's gonna be like 15-minute parking only? What do you mean by designed?
No, we don't really put timeframes on our parking spaces. And
I guess the big question is, are there going to be tons of cars parked in front of there all the time at the end of the day versus, especially since we were talking about the way it looks, that's going to be the front, right? And so if it's just for drop off and a little bit in the beginning of the day, a little bit in the day is a much bigger difference from always cars there all during the week. And
no, well taken point. Something that we can take into consideration when we are actually addressing this, but there is a lot of landscape planned to cover and buff that
it's just
appearance and look.
Clarify, so we probably want to see.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a consideration for us too. It's we want to make sure it's a beautiful look from the street for our product and also for the residents as well. So we're amicable.
Also, this way doesn't come up like in 2 meetings.
Well, I think what I hear your question to be are those outdoor spaces only for the use of school? I mean, as opposed to residents being able to park there.
Yeah, I think that
throughout the day.
Well, during the day, on the weekend, I think what I wanted is just clarification on.
Right.
Are there gonna be cars there, parked for how long and what plans during the day and on the weekend?
Yeah, that's a good point. Also, the landscaping, that's a good, concern. We're trying to, we've definitely enhanced it. So our idea is not that the beauty of the trees and the site sort of take effect and the buildings be fading in the background. And so the view of the trees, the foreground, the layers of grass and landscaping should screen all even during the school week, the traffic is coming and going there. So just to look like a bunch of trees and a nice landscape areas as you drive by, and whatever's happening on the site far away will be screened. And then similar on the weekends.
Let me ask it this way. Is the idea to prohibit residents from using those spaces?
Not right now. Is that something you prefer?
I don't know yet.
I don't, even if you did, I don't know how you enforce it.
Well, we can, there is ways to do it, yeah, well, there is, we do have in some of our other projects where, again, a different type of use and concept where we have prohibitive parking for particular uses. Where there is a large amount of population going for a particular use, but we would prohibit it. Again, to Mr. Manfredi's point, it's an enforcement, it's not a law, we can't have a police officer mandating, but it's generally followed. Especially in considering in this type of an environment, and I think it will generally be followed if there was a prohibition for it during the day, during the week, or something to that
I
effect.
think it'll just be harder if you're not going to have that horizontal frontage, as Caesar pointed out. If you have cars parked there, there's nothing you can really do about that. It's gonna be there, right? You're saying it's not gonna look like that, they're low. If you then have a ton of cars parked in front in that horizontal manner, it's going to look more like that factory than
Yeah.
potentially you would without, but.
Yeah, I mean,
Sure.
certainly we can buffer the entire area to prohibit that look that you are concerned with. Yes, absolutely.
And I'm sure you're gonna work with our landscape architect, because in general, we frown upon a wall of
Sure.
trees. We'd like to see it staggered and natural looking and back and
Yeah,
forth.
you don't want to have me design anything in that.
The wall of Aphrodite, whatever
Yes.
they call it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that.
Leave it to the professionals.
Let's not do there. But Mike raised a good point. It's in addition to my concern of what it looks like from Broadway. In addition to the front of the building, to have cars parked in front of it, like the cars are parked there now. And not that it's a problem, but the building is gonna be bigger than the cars that are there now, I presume. And it'd be nice if you showed the west view.
Sure.
Rendering, so we can decide. And like I said, visually from the road, seeing the courtyard instead of the school or whatever that is more, seeing that from Broadway or not seeing a building, continuous building, in my opinion, is more desirable. So.
Sorry, the courtyard is more desirable or the building is more desirable?
The courtyard.
Courtyard is more desirable, okay.
The visual of the two north and south buildings as opposed to north and south connected in the middle.
Noted.
So it's, and then you go to another view there, you were showing the west. Now, I presume that's the view west.
That's the view west.
That's looking towards Broadway.
Correct.
I unless I'm mistaken, the new building is not there.
Correct.
It's just for
No,
the,
I was
showing
saying,
for
these are
architecture.
the renderings from last time, so we
Yeah.
didn't get a chance to update everything based on the new plans. But
Yeah, so to be frank with you, I'm not really interested that much in what it looks like in the courtyard. We're interested in what it looks like from Broadway.
100%.
And if you want an example of what it must not look like, when you're coming south on Broadway. See, I see this all the time when I'm coming south on Broadway, and I said, that's never gonna happen. When you stop at the light at Sunnyside, look up to your left at 140 Broadway.
Okay.
And that nothing against those people that live there, that's the way it was designed. But that look is not a very good look. And if you don't agree with me, there's something wrong.
I'll drive one time, think about it.
Anyway,
Or is there a look that you do go up and down Broadway that you prefer?
I'm sorry.
Is there a look on Broadway that is more appealing?
Well, I prefer the two buildings looking out unless you convince me that making a continuous, like I said, the height requirements were purposely changed to prevent, to allow for buildings perpendicular. Because of the slope, you would have, if the height wasn't changed, you would have had a problem putting in those perpendicular buildings.
Yeah.
So
It's actually two-story zone, so it doesn't really take into account north or south, east and west. It's just 2 stories and
the height was purposely changed
I know.
to accommodate the buildings east-west.
So
Because you wouldn't have been able to put the building east-west if we maintained a strict 35-foot limit.
Right, so it's 25 feet.
35. Ed, you want to, or Mary, you want to explain that code change?
Oh, no, no,
Yeah.
well, I could, it was just the height went with the land, otherwise in the village it's low point to high point. If you're on a slow parcel, then the building can only be really low, so they did it so it would follow the land.
Right.
It was really to get away from having the staggered buildings running north and south.
Right, that's my point. Yeah. So, I mean, the trustees and their consultants or whatever they had purposely changed that site so we wouldn't get what you're proposing. So think about it.
So we've been through a lot of variations of the site design, and one thing that we looked at it initially was if you didn't have that existing building there, where you lay out the building would be sort of like a U shape with the new building in the place of the existing building. Right, then you could maintain this really open area from looking from Broadway, but you don't have the existing building, which I think,
Existing residents.
right, you don't have the existing building which you want to retain.
We'll save that for additional meetings and presentations. And maybe we'll change our
Would you
mind.
want to see the alternate rendering
It'd be nice.
out the existing
Yeah,
building?
yeah.
Without the residents, without the JP Morgan residents?
Without what? No, with different configurations that may look a little more like the first one.
Oh, noted.
Because, well, I'm getting into too much besides traffic. The roadway issues, and we'll discuss that after traffic. Okay. Board is finished with traffic?
Just a quick question. How long is the actual drop off area?
I'll tell you, it's 50 feet. I mean, 50, about 110 feet.
All right, again, I agree with Lori about dropping off kids and people parking their car, and jumping in and out. And I do, having lived at 140 North Broadway, I do agree. Yeah, the entrance and exit there is quite daunting.
Okay. Since everybody here wants to talk about traffic, and please, we're going to have another public session in addition to this little traffic version, so stick to traffic so we can, otherwise we're gonna be all over the lot and there's a lot to cover besides traffic. Maybe not as important as traffic, but still needs to be covered. So first, well, let's do it in person first. Anybody here who would like to opine on traffic? That's it.
Hi, Tony Altamir on 1 Meadowbrook Road, and I'm with the group of Irvington neighbors against traffic. And I want to pick up on the point you made, which is that while all of this conversation about FAR and all these other issues are interesting, it all starts and stops with traffic in our view, because in order for this to go forward, they're going to need a special use permit. In order to get a special use permit, they have to satisfy the traffic requirements in the zone.
Hold on 1 second. Your terminology, special use permit.
Special permit, yeah, any use in this.
It's a special use permit under the code.
Special use permit.
That's the word, that's the wording in the code.
That was special permit,
It
yeah,
says
but
special use permit.
yeah, but you
Yeah.
need one for any use in this district.
Right. So, and it's very, and the code's very specific about the standards that need to be met in terms of the impact that a project may have with respect to traffic in order for this board to grant such a permit. The AKRF may not have had a chance to come up with its set of comments to I'll call it a study, the report that they did to support their position on traffic, but our expert has, and we've submitted that to you, and I hope you all had a chance to review it, because in that report, it demonstrates in no uncertain terms that their report was woefully inadequate. It didn't cover multitude of issues that should have been reviewed and covered. It ignored several things that were extraordinarily relevant to the issue of the impact on traffic. It didn't even address some of the standards that are written into the code that need to be addressed in order for this board to conclude that they do satisfy the impact requirements. And we believe that when you look at the data that was presented in the existing conditions study from AKRF just a short while ago, and even their own information that they pulled together, which we think is inaccurate to begin with. But when you review that on its face, it shows that they flunk 2 out of the 3 standards. The third standard, they don't even address. So if that's their final report, then in our position is that then they failed to satisfy the standards. There's no way that a permit can be issued. We have lots of other, I urge you to study our experts submission because it goes into great detail, all of the flaws in their report, all of the inaccuracies, all of the omissions, in our view, arguably intentionally left out so as not to clearly demonstrate how this could never satisfy the traffic requirements under the code. They even acknowledge that if the Department of Transportation implements the Broadway diet, which seems highly likely, that would result in a disastrous situation. Basically, it would, by that alone would cause everything to fail under their numbers, not our numbers. Our numbers in terms of trip generation are substantially higher than what they've shown in their report. I don't know where their numbers came from, because frankly, the manual is pretty straightforward in terms of how you calculate this stuff. But in any event, we're just perplexed as to how that traffic study can be submitted in support of this special use request when it doesn't even address what the code requires. So,
Okay,
that's,
thank you. Wrap it up, please.
that's it.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Let me, thank you very much. That was very thorough. Suzanne, we got their report, the applicant's report, right?
Yeah.
And we got their report.
Yeah,
And-
I
and we-
forwarded their report to
Yeah, yeah.
AKRF
And
today.
and they have, the applicant has
Oh, yeah,
their report. You have their report?
Yes,
when they put,
Yeah, okay.
yeah,
Email.
So
Yeah.
I just want
earlier
to make sure
I
everybody had everything.
I sent their report to AKRF when we got their traffic study yesterday or today, I guess I got it. Yes. I forwarded it to AKRF, so they've got it.
Before we go any further, let me make a comment that there's gonna be experts submitting the applicant, the citizen, AKRF, probably the building inspector and other, maybe our village engineer probably has thoughts on traffic. He's been experienced with that. And it's up to us to look at all those things and ferret out a decision. I feel like the 3 bears, except we're the 5 bears. Some reports, some porridge is too cold, some is too hot, and some is just right. And we're gonna have to figure that out. Now, from experience, I had the pleasure of being on 2 juries that went to deliberation and conclusion. In both cases, there was a dueling experts. And believe it or not, the 12 people, including me, who didn't live there and didn't know each other, managed to ferret through the war of the experts, and using a little common sense, came to a conclusion. So I think we know each other, and we've been here for years. So I think we have an advantage to a jury trying to ferret through dueling experts. So I think we have that advantage, and we'll wait and see when all the reports are in and explanations are made. We'll be recused for a week and try to decide which expert has a valid point. Okay, with that said, do we have any other public in the office? Yeah.
Scott Edwards, 91 North Broadway. Not a lawyer, not an expert, just a couple common sense things that I'd like to say that I think probably you already thought of, but just to get them on the
He's a
record.
traffic now, right?
Yeah. So first thing is, I heard timing of August, and I think we all know that the traffic is a lot different in July and August than it is in September, October when school's in session. I work in purchase. I look forward to July and August every year because 287 is a breeze. September, not so much. So just saying that, please consider that timing, because I assume that there'll be some sort of impact study and how many cars are going through. And then the only other thing that I had, and I thought you had a really good point, you know, our son goes to the high school, our kids have gone to the high school. And that's just a drive up, kick the kid out, and you keep moving. But that line goes all the way down, basically to Broadway. So just looking at what they're saying as far as pulling spaces in with 12 spaces, I don't know that that's enough in the way that they have it structured. I thought you had a good idea as far as keeping things moving. I just don't know that they're gonna be able to do 12 spots, get people in, and have those spots cleared for the next people. I know they said 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock, but people work. It's not going to be a 2.5 hour drop off. It's going to be, 45-minute to an hour drop off when people need to go to work. So common sense things. I just wanted you guys to consider.
Yeah, the record show he was referring to. He was referring to Laura's question about drop off. From my own experience, going up Broadway, there's no parking in front of the Main Street School, even though there's angled parking there, but there's no parking during drop off periods. And the school has 3 or 4 volunteers there to keep things moving, because it does tie up traffic on Main Street, which you may not be aware, but using that as a small microcosm of what may happen with drop off up at the proposed school. The drop off can be an issue. It's an issue at the Main Street School. Like I said, that you go by there and there's 4 or 5 volunteers. Well, maybe they're getting paid. I have no idea. But there's certainly 4 or 5 of them there keeping the drop off moving, and they're middle school kids, not preschool. Anybody else in the audience?
Hi, David Osborne, 93 North Broadway. I want to thank the board for being thoughtful, appreciate the tone of your comments and your questions. You obviously take this very seriously, and we do too. I'm not an expert. I'm not a lawyer. I've read some of the traffic work that we've submitted. I'm a member of Irvington Neighbors Against Traffic. And you have to establish some kind of standard to determine what the level of traffic is today in Irvington at certain times of the day. Some people, it's not good. Some people will say it's bad because it's beyond this level. There's no way on earth this development's going to go in and not make it worse. The question is, how much worse, and is it beyond some level at which you would say, no, it's not acceptable? And so that's your job to figure out what the objective measures are and how this project's going to change it. And is it going to push it beyond that level? Because it's certainly going to make it a lot worse. How much worse? That's what we don't know. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, the gentleman, Rick.
Igor Galenko, 20 Strawberry Lane.
Can you say your name again I couldn't hear it.
Igor Galenko, 20 Strawberry Lane. Just a small point. I commute to Manhattan and I take a 629 train. Okay, when I get out to take a 629 train, there's no traffic. When for some reason I'm an hour late or 2 hours late, I cannot get out of this Strawberry Lane. So timing is important.
Thank you. Good point. Anybody else in the physically present that would like to make a comment? Okay, we'll go to the Zoom. Any comment on Zoom?
We couldn't get his name.
Nobody's raising their hand to speak, and there are no comments in the chat.
Okay. All right, so we're finished with traffic, at least for tonight. There are other issues that could impact the number of units that we're talking about. We haven't done site capacity. We haven't done that because the roadways haven't been settled. Ed, do you want to touch on that?
They showed a fire lane drawing today, so we need to go over. If you can tell me the miles per hour you set it at, not now. Operational use, required school access, and how we're gonna get to the north building. Those are gonna be important just to save. Because they're gonna need more blacktop. Whether it's parking or driveway, I don't know. I don't think you can operate on that hill I don't think it can turn around and work at that one spot, but let's get it earlier than later.
Yeah. And some of that may impact, site capacity.
Yeah,
and-
yeah, but yeah, right now, that's what I was gonna ask. Is there a roadway there that is coming over?
So it's come over a roadway, but they have turnarounds up in the upper level, and I don't even know if they can get.
Yeah,
to
but
that.
has that roadway been, is it a separate roadway? Has that been subtracted?
No, it doesn't have to be subtracted because it's access to the top, but where it turns
Oh, okay.
around, it has to be added.
Okay.
In the drawing you showed us earlier.
Right.
And I don't, some of it's not necessary for this piece, but just do it once. And I don't know how it gets up to the old building. And I don't know how it makes that turn at 15 miles per hour. I mean, looks like it was drawn at 0 miles per hour.
Okay, one of the other topics for potential, impact on the number of units would be coverage. We asked for a detailed chart, of each of all the items that, constitute coverage, and I'm not sure we got that.
No, we didn't. It
Okay.
was not in there. There were coverage numbers. You did have coverage numbers there. But what you should have is something that shows there's so many square feet in retaining walls, so many square feet in,
Yeah,
break it down.
They mentioned it in the beginning that they were gonna provide them.
Okay.
Now, we've done this before in other applications when there's a major hurdle, in this case, traffic. And you don't know how that's gonna come out. You don't have, you just keep these as a record, these questions. But spending a lot of money on questions that may never need to be answered. If you don't satisfy the traffic requirements. So we're not requiring you to answer these questions at the next meeting, but eventually they need to be answered. And as far as the other questions involved in coverage, I have this thing on the trash removal. If it's outside, if there's the satellite collections area, that's coverage. If it's inside in the parking area, you're gonna lose parking spaces, and we need to know that. How many spaces are gonna be lost, especially since there was a question about the staff and functions. Is the parking gonna get overflowed and people wind up parking on Strawberry Lane, which is, we really don't want that because people on Strawberry Lane would be very upset about that. And I would be upset if we allowed it, so keep that in mind. It's a detail kind of thing, but it's the kind of detail that could impact the big numbers. Air conditioning. Again, you need if it's gonna be on grade, you're gonna need concrete pads or some kind of support. But if it's gonna be up on the roof, it's gonna be a visual impact if you put it on there. I assume you're gonna have heating and air conditioning. I also assume you're not using fossil fuels. You're going with some kind of heat pump or otherwise. People I know that have gone with a heat pump, they still have their own burners because when it gets appreciably cold, the heat pump is not efficient enough. Yeah, well, I hope so. Okay, you did the environmental assessment form for all those in the public here, on the bench in the back, there's a copy of the environmental assessment form if you're interested. I only looked at it today, very briefly. There was a couple of questions and I don't remember what they were. That you had to know, and in my opinion, it might have been an S. There wasn't too many. There was one question I remember specifically. Will it change the current situation? And he said no. And I said, how can you not change the current situation? You're building empty land and you're putting. There was a couple of other ones. Take a closer look at it, and before we circulate it as lead agent, we want to make sure it's correct. Drainage. I'm glad you did the deep test hits and percolation. You mentioned I think it was in the EAF that the overflow would go to the public right of way or the public system. Well, the public system is at capacity, so connecting it to the DOT storm drain is not going to work. It's at capacity. So, and I guess the DEC requirements of not exceeding the current rate of flow of probably meet that, but the right of way, the Broadway does not really have any capacity, so and a greater effort has to be made to hold it without an overflow, because when it rains heavy, Broadway floods, and you got a lot of roof and a lot of road, a lot more than there is now. Maybe that would be a good comparison, and you compare the amount of water that's coming off now, but I don't know. I'll let Doug figure it out, Doug Hunt. I already mentioned the way it looks. We talked about the drop off. You mentioned the added issue with the existing building, which will house tenants. That I had a concern of them getting to the garage. And if they couldn't get to the garage, they were gonna travel to Strawberry and park up on the. And I didn't understand how that was solved. You had the cursor on that connection.
So there's direct access now from the garage.
There's the basement level, there's direct access right in and right down to the garage.
Is there an elevator or something?
Yes,
Oh.
elevator and then I go.
All right, just
Pass away at the base.
make it clear that there is one, so that otherwise, if they can't get to the parking garage, they're gonna park on Strawberry or park up there.
And that gravel access driveway is only for emergency access.
Well, right, but you're not gonna stop somebody from driving up there if they can't get to the parking garage.
Well, I mean, that's something that we can consider. We can put
Well, you
some-
made it better, so.
That's great.
Oh, the planting plan, you need, as you said, there's 115 trees and 56 are coming down. You need to go over that with our, again, it's another course that you may want to wait on. But eventually, we have a replacement planting. You're going to do a lot of shrubs, but that's not the same as canopy trees. And we'd like to see how that's gonna work. If there's insufficient area for canopy trees on site, there is a code provision that you can donate, you provide money to the village to make up what you can't plant, and then the village would plant them in the village with your money. The height, Ed, you went over the height.
Yeah, when we submit the height, please use elevations and show the topo that you use.
And existing and proposed elevations and grades.
That's Doug.
It's ready coming from right here.
We thought he fell asleep.
It was right in your ear and
Can you start over?
almost knocked you off your chair. Doug, you want to repeat that? He was surprised when you started talking.
Sorry about that.
Go.
Yeah, to have existing and proposed. The previous just showed the proposed elevations, but it's the lower of existing or proposed.
All right, and something we didn't mention before. And I mentioned briefly about the stone wall and the new stone wall, the details that are needed and how it's gonna look and so forth. Eventually, when we're finished with the stone wall, we have in the village something called a Broadway buffer. And if you do work with something new and permanent in the Broadway buffer, the zoning board of appeals needs to approve it. So that's way down the road, but eventually the ZBA would have to take a look at it because the new walls are in the Broadway buffer. We're about to say something?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, we're no longer proposing walls in the Broadway buffer. And what we're proposing is just driveway, which as long as it's approved by the planning board, does not require variance.
Right, but the rendering had walls.
Not anymore.
It's also still the activity of building them. There's more than just the walls. It's
Yeah.
Any activity in the Broadway buffer.
Well, activity is
So
letting
they've
it
got
dry.
plantings, they've got dry wells, they've got other things. So it will have to go there. It's not.
What's the
it's just a
buffer?
requirement.
Is it 50 feet?
Uh,
So is this a different requirement than it's not seeking a variance from that provision of
Oh,
the
it's not a
code.
variance, it's.
It's just a separate approval.
They
Okay.
have the approval authority, not the planning board, for activities in the Broadway off road.
Oh, we'll get it to a point where we're satisfied.
Yeah, you need their recommendation to go.
Okay.
So.
So don't go
It's
there
much
now.
more than 50 feet too, Caesar.
I don't know what it is. I should have looked at it.
It's 125 feet.
Whoa.
buffer,
No,
right?
Yeah.
no,
I don't think so.
I'm quoting. the
There's two
buffer.
separate things now.
Separate code is 50 or 60.
Broadway buffer.
Is it
It's our zoning code under buffers.
There's-
Yeah, I think
it's
it's 100, it's 100 for redevelopment of the entire lot, I think. But there's another one in there also.
That's why I said 50. If it's an existing lot, it's
There's two
50.
sections you have
Yeah.
to look at. You have to look at the new zone and the old code.
Right. There's more than one buffer, so make sure you read the correct one. There's the Croton Aqueduct buffer,
Yes.
there's the Broadway buffer, and I'm sure there's another one.
You can read the stone wall code. If you're reading the code, read the stone wall code too. There's a nice long section of.
Sure, I saw that already, yeah.
Okay, and then, of course, eventually you're gonna have to satisfy Ed on a construction sequencing, so that you don't wind up with mud and debris flowing down onto Broadway. All right, I'll continue looking at my notes and we'll ask the board if they have any questions. So Lori,
I have a couple questions. Is there a dedicated playground for the school?
Yes, there will be.
Okay, you're just not showing it yet.
Yeah, right now, we're thinking some part of the courtyard, that's where it would be.
Uh-huh.
Or someplace right in the front, so you can see kind of.
Mhm.
It's gonna be there.
Okay.
And now this is clear, it could be over here, so a few different places where it could go.
Okay. The existing building that you're turning into residences, remind me how many residences that is? Okay, that's what I thought. But you're saying that the road going up to it is only for emergency access. It's not for drop off and pickup.
Correct.
So it's not for deliveries and things like that. I just, and how far, if someone is to come with lots of packages in their car and park in the garage and then go to the elevator and walk in it, like, what path of travel is that? Because people are actually pretty lazy when it comes to their packages and all of that.
speak for yourself.
I walk to the train, so. So it just seems like it doesn't seem that close to me.
I think with the section showing the garage, because the garage extends further than.
Yeah,
Okay.
There's an elevator up.
Okay.
It's a short walkway and then you're quickly inside the basement.
You're in the basement and then there's another elevator up into the building.
Yeah, we're talking about putting an interior elevator in the building.
Yeah, it just seems like a lot of
I mean, it's not-
path
it's-
of travel for the,
Different type of living, but the benefit of the nice house, the nice architecture living there, I think that might offset some walking distance steps.
I'm not sure that you totally stop people from driving up.
well, that's a concern. And I also will say, I have seen a moving truck get stuck on Strawberry Lane, like for hours. I don't know if any of the residents were there a number of years ago, but.
Yeah, the transition and elevation, we've seen a lot of.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking about like even someone moving into the building, how are they getting their furniture there? And if you're telling me that road is emergency use only, moving in is not an emergency. So those are all things that I'm thinking about it. And also like the size of the elevator to bring furniture. And if that's the only way they can have access.
Well, my understanding is the only way to do that is you come in, you go around. You have to drop off your furniture where the parking spots are, and they have to be physically carried,
That's what,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the main part is last time we understood, there was no parking there. So if there's a drop off, then that's parking.
Well, originally we proposed that it would be used for loading and unloading purposes only, and the board wasn't comfortable with that, so the board wanted to see more connectivity between the buildings, so you would have that direct access. So that's why this plan now provides that direct access so that we could then transform that access way solely for emergency purposes and would not be used for, and it would just like the residents moving into the main building, everything's gonna go from the garage. I mean, it's the same thing, right?
Meaning, so when they move in, everything's coming up from the garage?
Yes.
Absolutely. That's the idea?
That's the idea.
So they'd be with the same, it's the same program for the units in the existing building and the units in
So
the new
they're
building.
in the garage, so how everybody uses the same elevator? The one elevator?
Well,
I'm trying to be.
Mr.
sure
Smith,
how-
correct,
how they get-
we didn't say there's one elevator. There'll be multiple elevators.
Okay.
In the concept similar to this, if you're living in the top north corner off the building, you certainly are walking that distance as well. It's moving functionality and concepts like this in multifamily projects, which are much larger, even 200 to 400 apartments, have a long distance. That's the moving company's obligation to deliver into place, or for individuals. But that's the concept that we are proposing, that elevators will bring in the material to whatever floor they're going to. That's the functionality of the space. It's just.
Yeah, if you're gonna have multiple elevators, I don't know if it will, but it might impact the number of parking spaces.
So Mr. Manfredi, I think you're referring to parking spaces with trash and with others, but we have accounted for those spaces. We have accounted for trash compact, we have accounted for storage down below, we've accounted for elevator
Yeah, but
landings.
it's not shown, so I don't know how many parking spaces you lose.
Oh, no, we don't, the parking spaces that we are actually exemplifying or noting are not compromised with elevators and
Okay.
trash enclosures.
Okay, and you just have to show us how you're gonna do it.
Sure, absolutely.
And you do realize you would need separate roll-offs, probably for the north and for the south. We recycle, so you need separation of bottles, cans, cardboard, newspaper,
Yep,
and trash.
yep, individuals residing in the
That
residence.
takes a lot of space. I know I'm president of a co-op, so it takes a lot of space.
Well, I'm not sure if your co-op has a trash compactor.
No.
Yeah, so in the concepts like this, we have trash compactors where the chute goes in, people throw the trash down the chute, and then there is separate within the trash enclosure, there is a
So
cardboard.
you're gonna have 4 different chutes?
No, one chute
Or
for building the size.
how do you separate the bottles and the cardboard and the trash? with
They
one
leave the
chute?
cardboard and the bottles in the trash area and
What trash area?
which you can't see.
Oh.
I know your questions are very direct without having understanding of the floor plan. But we can certainly go down that path, but you prohibit us because you want to speak about traffic, but then we start.
Well, I said these are details that.
Sure, we will certainly have these
Questions
audits.
down the road, you don't have to answer them, like I said.
Yeah.
Because it requires your time to do that and our time to look at it.
Sure.
And like I said, we may never get there. But it is a question and it's not gonna go away.
Sure.
I don't want everybody, you rent it all out and we say, oh, we got a trash pile, we need to put something out. A satellite collector out in on the grass. And you're not gonna get it because that's segmenting and we have to try to foresee these problems. So you don't change the plan and come in for an amendment for something we wouldn't have given you in the first place.
Sure.
As I said to the property owner of one of the houses while you were present. It's not something, if we're not gonna approve it in the first place, we're certainly not gonna approve it when you come back a year from now. Because you didn't figure it out right.
Valid questions.
Dan?
Just a question, if the state or the village-wide implement changes on Route 9 where they take away traffic lanes for bicycles and pedestrians, when is that decision? I don't know if you guys would know, or when might that come about, or if it does come about, that might throw a monkey wrench into everything.
So we've had conversations with DOT as early as this morning. They do not have direct indication of when or it will be into effect. There are a lot of moving parts to that, of course, because there is it's an entire corridor from down south to north, so a lot of villages are involved and certainly funding has a part of it as well. But our traffic study does incorporate a parameter for that if that was to take into account. And the DOT also understands our approach and their standing of the present moment.
And AKRF is, they're very familiar with it.
Right.
In fact, that was one of the reasons the village hired them to do the traffic. So
Good, okay, thanks.
How typical would it be to complete the paving job And then next year come in and change it. Mike Smith.
So is it the province of, I'm gonna ask the question out loud, is it the province of the traffic experts to advise us on whether this proposed traffic flow on the property is appropriate for the property?
We could ask them that. I mean, I don't know that that would have ordinarily come up in a traffic study, but it's certainly within their province.
So my question then to you is, does your study currently deal with that issue? Whether this proposed traffic flow
Well,
is sufficient?
no, because it was a traffic impact study. That would be,
Right.
you would ask HARF to just look at their plan and see whether they think it works.
I would be
They're-
working with them on the fire lane issues.
Well, I was wondering who weighs in on whether the emergency vehicle, this is sufficient for all emergency
Well,
vehicles?
Well,
Ultimately, that's
the fire department
my decision for the fire.
and
department.
Ed and
But
Yeah.
AKRF is gonna have to also work on issues of traffic flow.
so you really should think of AKRF as part of your staff.
Right,
Not,
well,
not the dueling, dueling experts. They're your staff. They do what you ask them to do and they provide the information you ask for.
Because I think the gentleman's point to heart, I mean, I about.
This one is about
Well,
3 or 4.
September and October.
All right. Oh, yeah.
Which is why, I mean, their last one was September 2023, I understand.
Mike Smith, Mike LaFuco.
Yeah, question about the emergency only area. You mentioned it was originally for drop off and loading, and now it's switched
Well,
to.
on the first plan,
Right,
because there
now
wasn't
it's-
that connectivity between the buildings.
Is there a plan to change the design of it, now that it's potentially just for emergency? And I ask because it has what looks like a nice circle drop off area, which go back to Lori, like you're kind of enticing people to use it by providing something like that if it's only for emergency, which probably don't need for emergencies.
We tried to keep the existing, because with the architecture, that's how it exists today with that wraparound. Look, that's not something that the board,
I mean, it's something that if we're concerned about it being used, despite it technically being for emergency only, unless there's actual ways to, prohibit people from doing it besides the.
They're gonna need that area for the fire apparatus operations.
Sure.
All the way to the top, and they need a lot of room to just turn it.
Okay, I'm talking specifically for like the circle with the drop off area.
Truck is the length of the circle.
What's that?
The truck is the length of the circle.
Okay.
It could change some, it can be less inviting maybe, but it needs to be there.
Also, my follow-up was just what is possible in terms of, prohibiting people from using it. Because if it's possible, people will use it. I mean, as far as,
well, one thought that we had, if this, something that the board would think is appropriate is we could put a gate at that. That's only accessible and you give the access to the fire department where they have the ability, and we've done this in other developments where you have a gate, you can only use it for emergency access. When the fire department has that emergency access, the gate goes up. That prevents anybody else from using it for any other purpose.
yeah, I mean, I don't know what the board wants, but I think if we really want to keep people from using that, we have to consider something.
That's very good thought. Too bad I didn't think. Okay, Mike, anything else?
That's it.
Caesar.
Smith? What?
I have.
Okay, I'm getting there.
Well.
Anything else from the board?
Not right now.
Other than traffic?
Yeah,
Yes, Vivian.
I wanted to, a couple of things. One is, did your new plan show that parking spaces 9.5, is it 9.5 by 15?
Yes, they do.
Oh, it has the bigger ones. Okay, good.
Wait, just to clarify that, the dimension 9.5 by 20 is only for parallel parking, no parallel parking.
It's all parking.
Where's it? The code says, I didn't see that. It says for parallel parking.
We've used it for all parking.
Every single space is 9.5 wide by 20 long.
That's what they've done.
They've done what the code says.
What's that?
I'm not sure. I couldn't, the text said.
I understand, but that's what we've done in the past.
So that's more of an interpretation than an actual
Yeah.
code requirement.
That's my interpretation.
Okay,
Ed's,
anyway,
by
that,
the way, Ed's interpretation becomes code.
The ZBA can talk to you if you want. Disagree with me, but.
We adhere to Chevron.
Mary Ann?
yeah, then the other thing I wanted to ask, and, you were showing how the school is, brick with the white, trim on it, with more than trim. Is there any reason you didn't do that for the other buildings? And for the residential buildings? And also, if not, I mean, if you're not gonna go, at least, I think we need to know what material you're proposing for the other buildings. All we're seeing is, color. I don't know whether it's steel. I don't know whether it's concrete. I think we have to have a better idea.
Yeah, we have to
of what they're
provide
gonna
more
look like.
detail on that in the next, we just didn't get a chance because
Okay,
we revised the plan for the connectivity and.
yeah, but you were pretty specific about what the school building would look like and how it would, complement the house. I just wondered whether you thought about that for the other buildings as well. And that would go toward, the character of Broadway, that Caesar was talking about. And then just one other thing, it is a special permit, not a special use permit. I double checked the code. Okay.
Ed, do you have anything?
Nah, we're.
Doug?
That'd be a lot.
No, the submission was, we need more information. And
Well,
in 2 weeks, they did a lot.
That's a rendering. There's no site plan yet.
Right, that, I didn't want to,
Doug, you have any thoughts, on the drainage, as long as they're here? Or any,
Nothing else. I mean, there's a lot to be provided and going through, so.
by the way, drainage is a particular item that can be costly. And other applicants have held off on draining until a major decision on a major point, like other properties have been other things, but this one is traffic, so. But it is going to be a problem. As I said, Route 9 floods already, so any overflows going to be problematic. Okay, comments from the public, not on traffic. Public that's sitting here. Yep, here we go.
So Peter McCallick, Strawberry Lane. I could have sworn that the setback under the MFO regulations was 250. And that anything other than driveways that are built there require BOT approval. I just have it right in front of me. And so I think if that's right, then I think that about half of those 12 parking spots are within the 250-foot setback and would require BOT approval. That would also go for any piers. So I have the language right in front of me.
no, we were talking ZBA.
Right, I understand. So this is the
That's
MFO
They
regulation.
have other issues.
So, yeah, so it's 250, I think. I mean, unless I'm just like not reading this correctly.
One second, let me verify that. Miriam,
I'm not sure what, I don't know.
This is what I'm,
We're looking for.
No, so why don't you tell us what the citation is to what you're reading?
sure.
and
It's-
whose citation?
This is the MFO.
It's in there. It's in
No,
there.
what I don't know, I'm sorry, what I don't know is where the parking spaces are. That was a little hard to read because numbers weren't on it and stuff, so.
I think it's the purple line. That's the 250-foot mark. So it goes right through there. So it's 224.
In addition to that, I made an effort to explain what FAR meant. And I think saying MFO, please tell us for the audience what that means.
Oh, that's the zoning regulations for this district. So that is
Family
the
office,
family office.
Okay,
that's the name of the district.
okay.
And in the section called bulk regulations, that's 224-47.9 B2. No buildings, community amenities, structures, or parking or part thereof shall be permitted nearer than 250 feet to the Broadway right of way. Okay. And so I guess the same thing would go for anything that, I guess any piers that went on the other side of the entrance there. I'm not sure if that's still the plan. I guess that would also be covered by that. Okay, so just on the EAF real quick, I just wanted to point out that under C, this is page 2, planning and zoning, that's then the bullet C is the proposed action located wholly or partially within an area listed in an adopted municipal open space plan. The applicant checked no. My understanding is that the property is on the open space index, and that was ratified in.
The open space inventory was removed a couple months ago.
So that's actually not quite accurate. I mean, so basically the open space inventory was ratified in 2003 when the comprehensive plan was ratified. So there's actually an official map of Irvington that lists that property as one of 61 or so properties protected under the open space. Yeah, I think I'm just pointing it out. I just think that, you know, the fact that the ECB isn't around anymore to make recommendations based on that inventory doesn't change the fact that we at the community decided more than 20 years ago that that space was worth protecting. And so in whatever way you guys decide is best. Then so on page 8, so there's a question about acoustics.
Excuse me, you're still on the EAF?
I'm still on the EAF.
Okay, page 8 of that document.
Right, and I think this may have been what you were referring to, sir, about noise. And so the applicant just clicked yes, but only referred to construction related activity. I think it probably a maybe more relevant concern for the people who live around that site is what about the noise after you build 70,000 square foot building. I mean, at floor area anyway, with all those roof terraces. I remember following the MFO regulations, like before the Board of Trustees. Big concern there, and the main reason why we don't have, say, restaurants allowed in the code is because people were concerned about the possibility of outdoor dining, which would have been what, 10, 15 tables at most. So they're proposing roof terraces that would probably, I guess, presumably they're big enough to bear all 150 people living in that building. Right. I mean, that's just like a level of noise that I think the Board of Trustees would be surprised to hear being considered here. And then I think more importantly, you asked again and again, quite fairly, applicants to tell you how their proposals fit into neighborhood character, right? You asked Mitch Adler that last month. You wanted a 4th garage. You wanted to know where else on Riverview Road did they have 4-car garages? I would like to know genuinely, where in Irvington do you have a multifamily building that has room for 150 people on its terrace? There's simply, as far as I know, there is simply no precedent for something of that scale. You might have a couple of multifamily buildings, four family houses that have roof terraces, but 150 people, that I think is unprecedented in Irvington.
By the way, I drove around quite a bit. I didn't find any.
Okay. Great. Okay. So anyway, I would be interested if the applicant can maybe provide us some pictures of examples of that, but.
The roof, the tower.
Oh, the roof, okay.
Oh, the roof, right.
Not for her.
And then also just this is more of a placeholder, but on page 10, there's a question about whether the project site is currently being used by the community for public recreation. I know this is going to be a surprise to a lot of people who don't spend time on Strawberry Lane, but believe it or not, that Maxon front yard has been basically our backyard for years. I think ever since Stanley Rubensaul was in the place. That's where we bring our kids for sledding. That's where we take our dogs for walks. And that is partly because we're a bit isolated up there in Strawberry Lane. It is pretty tricky to get to the other side of Broadway right now. If you wanted to walk your dog. So using the front yard of Maxon on the evening or the weekday or the weekend actually makes a lot of sense. I'm going to back that up obviously with some signatures, but I just bring that up because I think, again, it's tied to the use of open space. And I also just recall that WBP was proposing to turn that front area into a park for public use. Now, that obviously didn't go anywhere, but I think it seems like quite an improvement over what they have there, which is essentially a nice big open space that's unfortunately surrounded by a traffic rotary. Who is ever going to spend time in that kind of open space? Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience who needs to speak on something other than traffic? Yes.
Asya Trask, 20 Strawberry Lane. I have to admit that I do walk my dog on Maxon property all the time and evening and the weekend. So it's definitely, and people sled there for sure. Can you please switch to the rendering of the picture looking towards Broadway from like the mansion?
Did you change the?
Sorry, just a
Change the
just
rendering
slide
to
to
the courtyard looking out to.
out, yeah.
No, yeah, no,
The
next
other
one.
The other,
That
yeah,
one.
right. So
Now, keep in mind, the building, currently, the building, at the far end of this photo is not shown there in your presentation.
right. So I was gonna say that's just looking at that looks like a prison courtyard. It's just like, it's super narrow. Look at the just the design and calling it an open spacious accommodation. I don't see it here. And there will be a building blocking that off and at the end.
Yeah,
Maybe it's a perspective, but
it's a rendering, so I'm not sure it's.
And it's not accurate right now.
maybe,
I mean,
right.
It's last month's rendering. I'm not defending.
Maybe,
Oh,
I'm just
as a
saying, it
rendering,
just struck
probably
me
about
as
the
a quite an unpleasant.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's all. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Keep in mind, the renderings are not the scale, most likely. Thank you very much. Okay, anybody else in the audience who needs to speak on anything? Sarah, anybody on Zoom?
Nobody is raising their hand to speak and there are no comments in the chat.
Right. Any further comments from the board?
I know, people are on vacation. People.
They ran out of patience and left it.
Yeah.
No, it's a 4th of July weekend.
Just look at traffic on Long Island Expressway.
Well, the way I looked at it, I'm heading out east tomorrow and the traffic situation, excuse the expression of traffic, but the traffic is everybody is already there, so I'm gonna be fine. And Mary Ann, Ed, anything?
No.
Nothing else? Do you have any questions for the applicant?
No, thank you.
Okay, going once. Twice. Okay, the Irvington Planning Board meeting for tonight is closed. Thank you. Enjoy.